I think it's important to say that when it comes to selecting a place to do business, right, available housing has really shifted from what you would call a secondary quality of life factor for site selectors to more of a primary quantifiable constraint in the decision-making process for those site selectors, right? Housing scarcity and cost are what I would call major risk factors that can eliminate a community off that short list, because that's how the site selectors view it. They view it through a lens of risk, talent acquisition, and overall, really, not short-term benefit, but long-term viability. And not to take away from housing, and we'll get into this more later, but I think the single biggest factor in site selection, you tell me if you agree, is the labor pool. And available housing directly impacts your labor pool.
There's a lot of talk we hear in the press the past couple of years about AI. And we hear this mantra is repeated over and over. AI is going to be eliminating career tracks and jobs, and I think there are some factors that are truthful in that. But really, when it comes down to, like you just said, the labor pool, ultimately it all depends on the human factor. And corporations, manufacturers, energy companies, service companies, they all understand the one thing, and the good ones understand that if you take care of your people, the people will take care of the customers, and that will take care of the company's viability and health. So labor pool, you and I have found, is probably the most critical component of any recruitment or expansions that we've done with corporations here in San Angelo.
It's a non-starter. I mean,
if you
really
don't have it, it's a non-starter.
Yeah.
And even in the manufacturing sector, so let's put aside the whole AI mystique, robotics in manufacturing. Robotics really, in my experience, isn't replacing people. It's filling gaps that people aren't already filling, that they can't find people who will do certain functions
but then
it's so repetitive.
And in turn, what it's doing is you're actually requiring a higher level skilled employee to keep those robots running,
Totally.
to keep them functioning, to manage the PLCs.
It's high level technician type stuff.
Yeah.
So then you get commensurate higher pay. So and that leads to healthier families and healthier communities. So it all really that's one thing I find, is that there's always kind of this overarching belief that there's some power that controls a marketplace. Really, it's the corporations and the people that control the marketplace, and the marketplace adapts to that.
Yeah.
And so circling back to labor force, that's absolutely the most critical thing that we get asked by site selectors and CEOs and CFOs with corporations that we work with, is tell us about the labor pool first. And San Angelo's got a lot of strengths with our labor pool. It's smaller, it's more compressed, but we've also found it's more accessible and it's more loyal. And
Yeah.
I think we want to get into that too.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in a massive market, let's pick on Houston for a second. Love Houston. You have such a massive labor pool, and you have so much turnover because there are so many options. Whereas what we found at San Angelo is that people tend to just weigh anchor when it comes to working for a company, and they become very, very loyal to that company. And that company benefits from that. So we'll talk more about that. And I know you have an experience with that too.
Yeah, but weighing anchor, I think, to your point, right? If a community is not going to be able to offer housing options that align with somebody's lifestyle or their income, they're not going to weigh anchor, or they're not even going to come here.
They're not. And we've seen that with the hospital system. We've seen that with several manufacturers that are trying to recruit high-level, leadership-level talent, and they just can't get them to stick because they just say, we just can't find a house.
Yeah. And then if, let's say they do find a house, but if costs are high due to low inventory, well, now the effective salary required to attract those workers starts increasing dramatically.
Right.
You start pricing people out of the market. And then bigger picture-wise, lack of inventory, unfortunately, what that signals is a scalability problem for a business.
It does.
And more importantly, I think if there's a housing shortage in a community, what that then communicates about the overall community is that it indicates some underlying issues with the community's ability to handle growth, which can then extend to school capacity, traffic, utility services, all of which are looked at by site selectors.
Of course. and they see, you know, some smaller tertiary markets and even secondary markets, they see it as a boutique market. And that doesn't necessarily bode well for the expansion or the scalability of a company. So if you get a company that comes in and say, this is phase one's going well, but phase two's coming right behind it, where's the commensurate housing? That's where the challenges start.
Yep. So I think we as economic developers have to treat housing as a product. So we talk about having product on the ground, like your industrial spec buildings, spaces for businesses to move into, not having to wait to get something built or the infrastructure there. But I think we got to look at housing as a product that needs developing as well, right? It's got to be a data point in all the data sets. Housing has to be. There's got to be a housing development plan. And that's kind of what this housing study has done, is it's our first initial step in getting us to a point where we have a development plan that when we're asked, we can present that and say, here's the plan, here's our target, here's how we're making progress along that plan. Because the availability of diverse, attractive neighborhoods is what's going to complete our community's overall value proposition to either a business or a business's site selectors, that in turn is what's going to attract and retain that high-quality talent.